Hey there, and welcome to the instructor-led training series for MD-4011. My name's Lockie, and it's great to be here with you. In this module, we're going to be looking at Microsoft Copilot for Security. Copilot for Security is one of the best tools that a security professional can have today. So I want to make sure you understand how it can be utilized and also how we get it set up. So in this module, we'll be covering a range of different areas. Of course, first I'll take you through the 4 key primary use cases that Copilot for Security was designed for. Next, we'll look at some of the different functionality and integration points, effectively look under the hood and understand how things are actually working within our environment there. Once we've got this under our belt, we'll look at a couple of different experiences for Copilot for Security and how and where you can make use of it to change the context of the response you'll get back. Last of all, it's about getting it set up, how to use it effectively, what we can do to chain different prompts together, and I want to finish with responsible AI, how we've designed the platform to work in your favor and ensure that it is secure for our customers. So let's begin with those use cases. Copilot for Security was built from the ground up for security professionals. So there are 4 primary things that it was meant to do. The first is incident summarization. The ability to take a multi-step, multi-stage incident that contains lots of moving parts and be able to give you something that you can easily point to and say, this is what happened. This is the chain that led to a breach occurring. We can use the incident summarization tool to quickly understand what is going on when a threat actor is attempting to enter our environment. Next, reverse engineering of scripts. Through the Copilot skill of being able to translate from one scripting language to another, we are able to take that same thing and translate into natural language. Whether it be a piece of C# code or Python, or maybe you got something for a mainframe, we can easily take that code, we can understand what was being done, and then in plain language, you can get a very quick understanding of what you need to do to handle a threat. The ability to reverse engineer code on the fly is critical when it comes to the understanding of a security environment and the securing of your environment. Next, impact analysis. Now this ties nicely into our incident management. After the fact, we need to know what was affected, who was affected, how far that incident actually spread. Being able to know this quickly and being able to identify all of the different key areas that we now need to go through and potentially patch or fix or remove or replace. This is the biggest and most important thing that we need to focus on as security professionals, which means that its fourth and probably one of its most useful skills of a guided response is super important. When you are part of an incident, when you are responding to a threat actor in your environment, having something that just guides you through step by step in what you need to do to respond effectively, it makes a world of difference. We don't want to miss something. We don't want to take a misstep. We're already in the point where we are reacting. And when we react, we sometimes react without thinking. Copilot for Security will take you through an incident and ensure that you are able to respond effectively to threat actors in your environment and isolate devices, ensure users are no longer able to log into an environment or be able to respond effectively to potential issues that we find. Now, this is all well and good. Lots of really cool skills that we can work with. But for me, it is important to know how things are actually functioning under the hood. So let's take a look now at what Copilot for Security actually does and when we need to make use of it. Now, there is a lot of arrows going in a lot of directions here. I'll take you through step by step how this actually works. First of all, Copilot for Security is embedded in a number of different solutions. We'll talk about the standalone versus embedded in a moment, but for now, know that no matter how you choose to use Microsoft Copilot for Security, the process that we go through here is going to be the same. First, your natural language prompt written in normal human language is going to go through a processing component, which is that core piece of Microsoft Copilot, and more specifically, Microsoft Security Copilot. What we will then do is take this prompt that has been added to and potentially modified, enriched using the Copilot model, and then pass that into the broader LLM ecosystem. Copilot for Security is built atop the Azure OpenAI platform. Now, Azure OpenAI is meant to be an enterprise-ready version of the OpenAI large language models. What this truly means is that there are guardrails in place to ensure fairness and restore balance to any responses that may come back through. We can be effectively trusting of the responses that come through because of the work that Microsoft has done to ensure that those responses are balanced in their outcomes. Once these checks have been put in place, we've passed through all of the guardrails that are there. The response then goes back through to Security Copilot for it to add enrichment. There are multiple stages of pre- and post-processing when it comes to Copilot for Security. And for these post-processing components, as well as some of those pre-processing, we're performing what's known as grounding. This is context, and context is important. It needs to be relevant to your environment, not just to any environment that has a device or a user. What are your users doing? What are your devices using? What apps do you have installed? This is important, and we can leverage plugins over to a whole range of third-party products within our environment and first-party products within the Microsoft ecosystem to ensure that the data that you are leveraging as part of your prompting exercise is always relevant to your environment alone. Now, there are a couple of different ways that we can leverage Copilot for Security, and that context component, that ability to pull from certain data sources, is important. If you choose to go a standalone option, this is going to be by going through the Copilot for Security portal. You effectively get to turn on and turn off what plugins, what integrations you want to make use of. So take your pick. Do you want to talk to just Microsoft Defender XDR, or do you want to also integrate components from, say, Entra ID or ServiceNow? You can choose to turn on and off these different plugins to get different types of enrichment and different context. However, there is another option, which is option B, our embedded experience. This will set the context for you based on where you use Security Copilot. So the example here is actually how we use Copilot in Intune. It is able to go through and understand that because we are asking a question in the context of Intune, we're on a device page, or we're on a user page, or an application page. Well, that's the context we care about. That's the thing that we're interested in. It uses this context based on this embedded experience to ensure that the responses that it gives back are relevant to the thing you are looking at on the page. Now, regardless of whether you want to use that standalone or that embedded experience, we do need some dedicated compute to work with. For this, what we're going to need to do is head on over and deploy some security compute units. Security compute units are our mechanism for ensuring that you have an isolated enclave when it comes to your prompts. Security information is unique. It's sensitive, and sensitive in ways that other types of information in an environment may not be. So what we do is we give you a way to deploy a specified amount of compute in a specified location to ensure that data is only processed there. You'll require an Azure subscription, and then in that Azure subscription, you will deploy a specified capacity of security compute units. Now, capacity can be difficult to calculate from day dot, but easiest way is to start small, deploy, see how people are using, and monitor over time and expand as needed. There are guides in Microsoft Learn over at learn.microsoft.com to assist you in capacity planning and giving you some information on how to monitor this capacity over time. There are a couple of different ways that I will show you in a demo shortly where we can deploy our security compute units, either directly through Copilot for Security's portal or over in the Azure portal. Take your pick, it's the same outcome either way, but our recommendation is to use Security Copilot's portal for ease. Last of all, to do these actions, to actually deploy these components, you need to be quite a high-level administrator, either a global admin or a security admin, to be able to go through and actually set the environment up once that compute is deployed. So once the capacity is in place, we are now ready to go through and get ourselves set up. So let's go through and get that capacity in place so we can start making use of Copilot. Okay, so here we are in the Microsoft Security Copilot portal. Our goal is to start deploying our security compute units, those SCUs, to ensure that we have set up our dedicated capacity. Now, by setting up this dedicated capacity, this works in a little bit of a different way to how other Copilots work within the Microsoft ecosystem. Security has sensitive data, so it needs an isolated location for that data. It is more sensitive than other data types, so the managed capacity ensures that you have a combination of performance and a location guarantee of where your data will be processed. Now, the first thing that is critically important is that you do need that Azure subscription. It must be in place for you to make use of Security Copilot. I'm going to select my subscription here and then select a resource group that I wish to deploy my resources to. You may wish to have a resource group that is separate specifically for this capacity, or at least name it in a way that makes sense, something that allows you to note where you need to deploy that resource, that it is relevant to our security team. As you may have noted, we also need to ensure that we are owner or a relatively high-level permission type of user to be able to actually deploy these security compute units in the first place. So make sure you have those in place, and since you're an owner already, apply any locks or protections to the resource group to prevent accidental deletion. Now, the name can be customized, but if you leave it blank and go with a suggested default name, we will automatically generate a unique global name for you, for your security compute capacity. This is one big difference between using the Microsoft Security Copilot capacity deployment page as opposed to using the Azure portal. Your next major choice is what geolocation you wish to deploy your capacity to. The dropdown shows that there is a range of different capacity regions that are present. Australia, Europe, UK, and the United States are the ones shown to me. By picking a different prompt evaluation location, we will tie your security compute units to a very specific Azure region. For this example, I'm going to select my United States region in order to see what region we actually get deployed to. So, prompt evaluation location is the United States. Our capacity region will be US East. Please note the little tick box just underneath our prompt evaluation location. You are able to process Copilot prompts anywhere in the world for optimal performance by ticking that box. However, this is a trade-off between your security capacity and where those prompts are going to be processed. Next, you need to select your security compute unit capacity that you wish to actively utilize. I have selected just a single compute unit capacity to begin, but over on learn.microsoft.com, there are pages that can assist with planning for capacity requirements. As mentioned earlier, monitoring is the best way to know how much is going to actually be utilized. We can see the indicative cost for public pricing there, consider your personal or eligibility for discounts within your environment, and agree to those terms and conditions once you're ready to provision your compute capacity. Now, as an alternative, we can provision our capacity over in the Azure portal. We'll head there shortly and take a look at our details as to that style of provisioning process. First, we're going to head over to portal.azure.com. Here, we'll search for security compute units. That's what we need to look for when we're looking to create that security capacity. Here we go. Let's just head up there now and search for those security compute. There it is. So, Microsoft Security Copilot compute capacities. Selecting this, we'll be able to go through and actually begin the same provisioning process we were just looking at in the Security Copilot portal. Now, the portal does autofill many results in Security Copilot space, but here in the Azure portal, you are going to need to fill out all of these fields directly. So we will require a capacity name. This will have to be unique, and you need to come up with this yourself. I've just gone with Security Capacity 2025, and then a set of unique numbers in order to ensure that it is globally unique. I've selected the same prompt evaluation location of United States. I've got US East as that capacity region, and I have allowed for, if the location is busy, to evaluate elsewhere. I've kept that with the single security compute unit, and then I'll accept those terms and conditions, review and create, and then provision those components there. All right, once it's loaded up, let's hit create, and then we'll continue our setup over in the Security Copilot portal. Okay, our resource is now deployed. We can see finished setup in Security Copilot is shown on screen. Let's go and follow that advice and head on over to the Security Copilot portal to finish the provisioning process. Once we've loaded up, or as it says, powered up, we'll need to select the capacity that we've just provisioned. You can have multiple capacities, so it is important to select the correct one here. I've only got the one, so we'll hit continue. It'll take a couple of minutes to go through and actually set this capacity up to do the last mile configuration. But once it's done, we've got just a last few things that we need to confirm to make sure that everything is ready to go. First, we confirm that your data will be stored in the United States based on the tenant associated with the account. So we do store your data, any that is generated, in the same tenant location as your Entra ID. If you need more details on how we protect data, the link there will take you to the Microsoft Learn page focused on data residency and data protection. All right, next we'll hit continue, and we'll be able to choose a few optional extras to help improve Security Copilot. The first is whether you allow Microsoft to capture data from Security Copilot to validate our product performance. Now, this is human review and anonymized. This is not done as part of improving a security model, but more about ensuring that the platform is working to its best ability. We do have a secondary tick box that is focused on validation and building of the AI security model. Both of these follow our responsible AI practices, and each organization needs to make a call as to whether they want to leave these turned on. Last of all, Copilot is asking to access Microsoft 365. We use this for so many different points within Copilot for security, including Microsoft Purview for data access and data assessments. So it is important to enable this. However, you can choose in the owner settings page later to disable access to M365. Our very last point of configuration is all around audit data. So if you wish to set up an audit trail in order to hook into Purview and note exactly what is going on with the Security Copilot for later assessment, you must tick the box here. Again, we can change this later in our owner settings. From here, the very last page is all focused around usage. You need to ensure that you have selected the right roles and that everyone is able to, well, access what they're supposed to, be able to see what they need to. I've chosen to add them later, but you may choose to instead use the recommended Microsoft security roles there. All right. And as we can see, hitting continue here will finally take us through to the main homepage for securitycopilot.microsoft.com. From here, we can easily access the environment in a dedicated fashion by going to that website at any future time and being logged in with the relevant Entra ID credentials. Hit finish, and we're ready to begin prompting. Now, when you ask prompts of Copilot, it's important to always keep 4 key points in mind. The first is that you need to have a clear goal. What information do you actually need? You need to provide clear context. Why do you need this information in the first place? You need to provide expectations. Who is this for? Why do you need it formatted a specific way? And you need to say what sources you want to make use of. And when I say, I do mean it. This is a natural language prompting system. So you are going to be specifically stating exactly what it is that you require and how you want that data back. As much as you will probably get a satisfactory response by saying, summarize incident, I can tell you right now that if you were to specify that you wish to summarize an incident in Defender XDR into a paragraph that I can submit to a manager and then create a list of the entities involved, I mean, you can see how asking something more specific like that, it hits these 4 points of giving us goal and context. We've got clear expectations in that it's for a manager and that we need to create that list of entities as part of the outcome. And we've also scoped it to Defender XDR. We've given a focus point. That is going to give you that is something much more relevant to what you actually require in your environment. And I'll also tell you right now, the power in Copilot for Security is not in the single prompt. That's a useful way to explore, and we can have chat back and forth style conversations with Copilot for Security. The big power in it is when we prompt in a chain, one after the other after the other. This is what's known as a prompt book. Prompt books are designed to give you a mechanism to ask not just one question, but a series of them. Think about if you were to give a request to a junior researcher or to someone in your security operations center that is really good at finding all of those little pieces of information. We don't ask the final question first. We don't ask for the summary when we haven't gathered all of the information first. Follow that principle when you're focusing in on using prompt books within Copilot for Security. Think about how you can ask one question to start gathering some info, find some relevant information, get a summary of this, get some info about that. Combine them all together into a series of prompts and then ask for your summary at the end. The context and the confidence you will have in the answers will be much higher. So let's jump across and take a look at some prompt books and see how this chain actually works. Now, it is all well and good to run single prompts. How can Security Copilot help? It's right there at the bottom of the page. There are many times where we really only need to ask one thing at a time. Tell me about this user. What's relevant about this device? Go find apps associated with a particular device or get the groups associated with something within Intune. These make sense as single prompt use cases. Nothing too complex, and using an effective prompting strategy, we can get some relevant results back. But there are many more complex scenarios that need more complex prompts, and we don't want to have to write them out every single time we want to use them. We want to reuse them, and a prompt book is the way that we do this. I want you to think of it like a conversation with Copilot. It's a back and forth interaction with a series of prompts where we gather information and then use the information we gather to inform prompts further down the chain. Here in our user analysis prompt book, as an example, when we go through, we can take a look at Intune managed devices in combination with user analysis provided through other parts of the Microsoft 365 service. So we can see there is a number of different tags covering the different services we are actually going to leverage here. You'll need to provide a few different inputs to make this work. But the main thing here is we've got two critical inputs of a user UPN and a duration. This allows us to target a specific user whilst also setting how far back is relevant for us to look at. Even a prompt chain like this needs a little bit of customization on the fly. But following through each of these prompts, we are in the information gathering phase. We are looking for key pieces of relevant info about users and devices that at the end we can summarize. We can have something that is collated and specific to your scenario that is always going to return the most relevant information straight away. Now, I've got a few useful things to note about promptbooks. What we're looking at right now, this main page, is just an example of the details. If you dive into the actual running of the user analysis, we can see our inputs there, and then we would put those in and hit submit. Note up the top where it says my sessions. This is going to be a save session that we can come back to later. So on top of us being able to rerun prompts, we can actually return to previously run prompts and prompt books at a later moment. Now, if you are interested in browsing all of the prompt books that we have provided, it's actually better to go top left-hand corner and into the prompt book library. In addition to the Microsoft provided prompt books, your saved prompt books and ones that are provided and shared amongst your organization will also be present. So you can share amongst one another and we can make effective use of your time. Here we can see our user analysis component, and if there's something we wanted to modify, we can duplicate that and make changes that are effective and efficient and relevant to our environment specifically. Now, when we are looking to use Copilot for security, it is important to remember that responsible AI is at the core of understanding how we make use of Copilot for security. I've got a series of questions that I want to run through, and there's a few that really stand out to me. How do we ensure fairness in Copilot for security? Well, we use rigorous testing to ensure that our models are free from bias and provide fair outcomes. The guardrails we put in place at an enterprise level are there for a reason. What measures are in place for privacy and security? We use robust data protection measures to ensure that user data security and responsible users are maintained together. That ability to deploy using security compute units and have a guaranteed location of processing is a part of this. How are we maintaining transparency? Well, we've got clear documentation in terms of how things are working, but also when you ask a prompt of Copilot for security, as an example within a prompt book, we'll show you how each response came about, what the particular reply was, and you're able to audit that after the fact. How do we ensure that we have reliability and safety? The models undergo extensive testing and continuous monitoring to ensure that there is reliable and safe performance at all times. There is so much that goes into place here. We do so much to address inclusiveness and ensure that there are accountable people for the outcomes of our systems, implementing mechanisms to address and ensure any issues related to responsible AI usage are addressed and not left on the vine. So, with this as my last point, this is kind of just to hone things in, I want to summarize. With this core basis of responsible AI, we have built our Copilot for security for security professionals from the ground up. It gives you a mechanism to be able to go through and build out an assistant for your security environment. Regardless of whether you use it in a standalone or embedded experience, you can be confident in the replies and the responses that you are getting back. Being a part of Microsoft's trust boundary there ensures that when you create those effective prompts, you get effective, context-driven, and clear responses back from Copilot for security. I look forward to seeing you in the next module of this learning series.